Hi everyone. Um, I just want to say this, and I'm going to not really talk about Wendy Williams the way that other people have been speaking about her or her condition, because this is a sad moment in media, radio, particularly radio, because Wendy Williams came from radio. She's a radio icon. I am a huge fan of Wendy Williams. Going back to 32 years ago, okay? I will never forget when I was introduced to Wendy Williams. I was 8 years old, and it was the summer of 1992. And I'll never forget, I was being very restless, and me and my grandmother, we shared a bedroom, okay? And that's a whole other story for another time. And what happened is my grandmother had a transistor radio. If you know about those, that tells you how old you are, and it tells me that me and you are the same generation, or probably you're from another generation. So what happened is that I couldn't sleep that night. It was a summer night, and I was one of those kids that I was restless. And so my grandmother said, you know what? Since you can't really go to bed, since you're getting on my nerves, here, take my radio and listen to some goddamn music. So I said, okay. So what I did was I switched it from AM, which was like the talk radio stations in New York, to FM. And so I had switched it to FM, and I was like, I have to hear R&B. I'm not going to listen to no rock. I ain't going to listen to no country, no classical. I got to hear R&B. So I landed on a station called 98.7 Kiss FM. And when I landed on that station, there were some radio personalities I had heard. And what happened is the next day afterwards, I discovered Wendy Williams. And she would do the 6 to 10 time slot. And she would host a show on the top 8 at 8. And she was different from the other radio personalities because she actually would give you news on celebrities, and she would even talk about her life. Like, I'll never forget when she told people, I lost my virginity at 16 in the back seat of a car with my boyfriend at the time. And I was like, okay, Wendy, okay. I'm like 9 years old. Is this appropriate for me to listen to? Okay. I didn't care, and I just loved it. So what ended up happening, my grandmother, she bought me an actual radio where I could listen to an actual station as well as play cassette tapes. So that was big. I mean, that was like huge. So this is a person that I discovered. She was a woman. She was black. And at the time, she was still in her 20s. She was like 28 years old. And I had never necessarily wanted a career in radio per se, but I became interested in learning about media. And when I was in college, I minored in television and radio. And so Wendy to me was inspiring. She was fun. And I could relate to her because she was a child growing up. She was teased based on her body type. I was not necessarily teased, but I was forced to shelter myself at a young age because of my body type. So I could relate to that as well. The weight gain, the hormones, the puberty, and all those things, I could relate to that. And so when Wendy left New York due to a particular individual who's now going through their own scandal back in 1997, I believe, or 98, that was a sad day for me. I didn't listen to radio for 4 years until she returned, and that was in 2001. I would not listen. That's how much I'm a hardcore Wendy fan. Okay, so moving forward, when she came back to New York and did the Wendy Williams experience, and she went to WBLS, that's when she started really becoming more nationally known. Then she came out with the book, and then she had the syndication deal, and she was in different markets throughout the country. And then she had the Wendy Williams radio show. Not the radio show, but she had the show on VH1. And then she had the show where you saw Charlemagne the God. And that's really what made Hollywood take notice. And when that happened, that's when everything started to change for her, for the better. I always had a feeling that Wendy was going to go into television, okay? Because Wendy was good. Wendy was good. But what I think caused things to go downhill for Wendy, I'm going to keep it real. I believe that when Whitney Houston passed away, the way she did, and she passed away in a traumatic way she did, I believe Wendy Williams, because of like talking about Whitney Houston, you know, the interviews and stuff, and every time Whitney Houston, you know, did something, she would talk about it. I believe that, and it was interesting because she never met her. I believe that the thought of her going out the way that Whitney Houston did started to freak her out. And I remember when she talked about it the day after Whitney, 2 days after Whitney passed, I saw that live show. And when she said I was copping my crack on the corner of Girard Avenue, that's like near where my mother worked, which is the courts. I and my mother, we just dropped our mouths. She admitted that she smoked crack. I believe that was the beginning, but not like a real, like we noticeable seeing her go down. But I believe that was the beginning. The fear of, will I end up like how Whitney Houston ended up? But she was able to conceal it. However, when she fainted on that show, that was the start of it. And I believe that she saw her life flashing before her eyes, and I believe she saw her future. I don't believe that Kevin necessarily is the main cause. I believe he's a part of it, but I believe that she saw something, and she saw her future, and she went into shock, and she saw what it could be, and I think it was something scary. Or, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm going to keep it real. She could have saw the spirit of Whitney Houston. She could have saw the spirit of Whitney Houston. I'm just saying. I know people want to dispute it, but the way she looked, she was looking at the ground. It's not like she was just staring at the audience. She shook back, and then she looked at the ground, and then she fainted. Something scared her. I believe she was seeing the future. And I believe that that's what caused a lot of it to happen. And I believe that if Wendy Williams would have took a hiatus at that time and got counseling and went to really got back in tune spiritually, because Wendy never really talked about God or anything like that. Like, she never really talked about being faith-based. If she would have focused on that part of herself, I don't think Wendy would be in a situation that she's in. Another thing too is dementia. Dementia is no joke. The difference between dementia and Alzheimer's is that Alzheimer's is more, both of them are biological, but Alzheimer's is more of it doesn't happen due to a shock or a crisis. It's just something that unfortunately occurs, that can occur to someone. But dementia kicks off when you go through a traumatic mental experience, because it happened to my grandmother. when Wendy had a breakdown, Wendy, I feel, lost her mind. And the frontal lobe, that dementia that she has, is no joke. And I had said, when I saw the previews, I said, I believe she has dementia with Lewy bodies. But it's frontal lobe dementia. And the aphasia, that's another thing. And the combination of both is just sad. A person who made their living being a communicator for over 30 years is going out like this. It's a cautionary tale. And it's a tale where the gifts that we're given, we have to use them responsibly. And we have to use them to where we're helping people and not hurting people. And I don't think Wendy intentionally meant to hurt people per se, but I do believe with the Wendy Williams situation, the Whitney Houston situation, I believe that even though Whitney was doing drugs, Wendy profited off of that. And she became big off of that situation. She made Hollywood take notice partially because of Whitney Houston's decline. And they never met. They were only in the same building at Constitutional Hall back in 1985-86 when she was a senior in college. And it's just, just a sad way. So with that being said, I'm going to sign out. And thank you for listening, tuning in. Yes, I know I sound groggy. I apologize about that. I'm going to make a video about commentary about that next week. And I will talk to you all later.